Mike Bagley, Canton, Ohio, JIICF, APF-I.
You know, the very essence of the mental game is this. The only reason an event matters is because we make it matter.
Welcome to the Mullins Farrier podcast.
Every horse, whatever it was doing, had a season. Once their competition season finished, they took the shoes off, they chucked it out in the field with some other horses, and it had a 2, maybe 3 months period where it went and remembered what being a horse was all about.
Even in a cheaper area, your prices should be set by your skill level, by your experience. And some people might not feel that they're worth, as much as others. But if you're only charging $160 to shoe a horse, then the only way you're making money is on your trims.
The WCB was a way to make sure that you kept the trade alive. I think I'm a custodian of the trade, so it's like we have to keep it going.
It was hard, but you adapt and overcome, and that probably gets to me where I am now. It's problem solving, horseshoeing's problem solving, and back in the day it was problem solving how to be as strong as the older apprentice is. So it's all about adapting and overcoming, which was good.
I know we learn every day, but you do have to put yourself outside the box and just continue to learn, which is why I was just trying to do my fellowship, because I still have apprentices, and if I stay at my AW, I'm stagnant.
Welcome, everyone. A little shopkeeping before we start here. It seems to me as though September just flew by and the end of it is coming up very quickly. And as such, there are a lot of events that are happening very shortly, including the Ontario Farriers Association's convention and competition in Lumberdy, Ontario from the 28th of September to the 30th. Riley Kirkpatrick is the keynote speaker, and it looks as though Terry Osborne, a former guest, is also doing some demos and talks. You can find all the details on the Ontario Farriers Association's Facebook page. I'm also very excited to announce that my mentor and friend, Chris Gregory, is coming to Canada the weekend of the 18th and 19th of November to do one of his infamous whole horse dissection clinics. This will be over 2 days in Schaumburg, Ontario. I will release more details on the socials. For myself and anyone else who has ever witnessed one of Cody's dissections, I have heard nothing but praise for his unique ability to convey so much information in such a short period of time. This will be an experience you won't want to miss out on. Also, in case I haven't mentioned it before, the Stoneleigh International is coming up at the end of October, as well as the BFBA's Focus Convention. Once again, I'll be joining forces with podcaster extraordinaire Danny Bennett to bring you loads of content from the competition as well as the convention. Go to forgeandfarrier.co.uk for more information. And before we get started, I would like to say a special thank you to the gracious sponsor of this episode's Stratum Tectorium, Out West Design and Fabrication. You can see all of their beautifully made farrier and vet bodies on full display on their Facebook page. And while you're there, maybe just reach out and tell them thank you for making this episode possible. Way back in one of the first episodes of the podcast, I had complained to a guest that I was struggling to get my hands on a copy of Chris Gregory's forging book, the one that he had written before his infamous textbook. Shortly thereafter, a stranger I'd never met sent me my own copy. He apparently had too. I've had the great pleasure of meeting this gentleman several times since, mostly at the HoofCare Summit in Cincinnati, Ohio, where Mike is a constant fixture at the IAPF's booth in the trade show hall. As you will hear, he is a kind and humble man who really wants to give back to the industry that has given him so much. For some context, you will hear us mention a Kathy, and this is of course referring to Kathy Lesperance, a former guest, the former president of the IAPF, and my mountain biking mentor. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did. The JIICF.
That's Brotherhood.
Oh, okay.
Brotherhood of Working Farriers. Yeah.
That association, does it still exist, or?
It still exists. It's
Okay.
not real active.
Oh, okay.
For years, they were, I'm sure it'll see CJF too. They were using that, and then the AFA got after them. So they had to change because AFA owns CJF.
Right. It's like a patent thing.
They were arguing that because they put the extra letters behind it, that they were allowed to use it, but AFA got after them and they had to change it.
Oh, okay. You probably know Wesley Stewart from out in Australia. He was part of that organization too, was he not?
Yeah, I believe, yeah.
Okay. How long ago was that you did that?
I took their test in 2011.
Okay, so not that long.
It's not that long, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I renew every year. I hardly hear anything from them. They never grew as big as the AFA.
Right.
But part of it was they did not promote a standard like the AFA does. I found out, too, that they do a lot of shady stuff, like just giving the credentials without testing.
Oh, great.
I went through the testing process.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Kind of takes away from
It takes away from the whole credibility to the deal as far as I'm concerned. But, so I haven't been active in them. I just
keep it up.
Keep it up just because I have it.
Okay. What was that process like, and why did you decide to do it in the first place?
I went for several years without belonging to any associations. I kind of felt stagnant. Let's see, at that point, I was probably around close to 20 years in the business, but I was stagnant. I just wasn't growing any. My business was kind of at a plateau where it was just flat. I mean, I just wasn't bringing any more work in. I wasn't bringing in good work, just too much backyard and dink type horses that nobody else wanted to do. That's what I was doing. So
okay, yeah.
I started looking at different ways to, add some credibility myself. And I had joined the local association, which was an AFA affiliate.
Okay.
I talked with some of them guys. I was going to start their testing, and then I found this one, when I did my search on the internet, I looked into them a little bit, and they had one tester in my state. Okay. So I called him and I talked with him a little bit and asked him what his process was. So he explained to me that we could do it all in one day.
Okay.
And he told me buy the study guide from him, study. He said it would start with a written test. Then he'd bring me a horse to shoe all the way around. He said, we don't do a shoe board, but we do a live forging demo.
Okay.
He asked me what my experience was, and he told me, now they have different levels. They have Apprentice 1, Apprentice 2, Journeyman 1, Journeyman 2, and then Master.
Okay.
He said, now you qualify for Master. He says, but I'm the only Master in the state, and you have to have 3 of them present to test you for that.
Oh, okay.
I said, where do I do that? And he said, Georgia. I said, I'm staying home. So he told me, he said, I can test you for Journeyman 2. He said, we can do it at my house.
Oh,
we'll start with the written test. He says, I'll bring you a horse to shoe. You'll have 3.5 hours to shoe on all the way around with handmaids. He says, then I'll give you 2 shoes to make in front of me. I'm like, okay, let's do it. So I think it was a worthwhile process, but if I'd have had to do it over again, I'd have went the other direction.
Right.
Maybe you went ahead and did the AFA deal. I just never really got involved heavily with them. I had some bad experiences with them I'm not going to get into. So I'm not going to run anybody down. That's not my style.
Yeah.
So I just don't want to do that. They've come a long way since I first heard about them way back in the late 80s when I started.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they've come a long way, and they've changed a lot, and I give them a lot of credit for that. And I know a lot of people. I have a lot of friends there, and I'm going to keep it that way.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yep.
My opinion, all of the associations out there now are doing good things. I just think we got to all find a way to come together.
Yeah. Well, this event was kind of cool for that because Jeremy tried to have everybody represented with a booth.
Yeah, he's always done that. When Frank Lessiter first started this, the AFA and he split because they used to be, the journal started out the e-magazine for the AFA.
Right, yeah.
And after Frank bought them and they wanted, I'm not sure what the riff was, but they had a riff. And
yeah.
I'm not going to get into that either because I don't know. So I'm not one to talk about things I'm not sure of.
Mike's flirting with controversy
Yeah,
here.
I'm not going to. Whatever that was, I mean, it worked out because Frank started this, Frank Lessiter, and I'm not sure if it was the first one I came to or the second. I know I came to the second and third. I was impressed. I mean, a lot of people didn't like the fact that there's nothing live going on. It's all PowerPoint, but you learn a lot from sitting there and watching a PowerPoint.
Yep.
And I don't see what's wrong with that myself.
Right.
I made it to one AFA convention. I think it was in Mobile, Alabama. I can't remember what year it was, but I do know how it happened was I get the emails from FPD and they do their contest and I always enter them. Why not? I get a call one day and it was them. They told me, "Hey, you won our contest last month." I said, "Oh, okay, what'd I win?" Registration to the AFA convention.
Oh,
So you just got to find your way here.
okay.
So my way, there was a board member that I know, and I called him, and it was Tim Dodd, and I called him and said, "Hey, Tim, are you going to the AFA convention?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "I'll drive down." He says, "Why?" And I said, "Well, I want a registration to it." He says, "Want to ride along?" So he wanted the company, and
Yeah, right.
I had a ride there. So
Perfect.
it was a good time. I got to see a lot of good stuff. I mean, they do most of the contest, a lot of the contesting there. They had some lectures and PowerPoints I sat in on, but watching the competitions was really, it was worthwhile. I've never done that much myself. I've done a little bit, but I wish I'd have done more. But I got to stand there and watch Chris and Cody Gregory working.
Right, yeah.
I watched Craig and Bodie Trinka working. There were some others, but I watched the Vern Hornquist that memorial. It was all the older guys.
Right, yeah, which is really cool.
Yeah,
to
that
see
was
them.
cool to watch them guys work, and ones that have been in the business a long time and forging shoes and
Still doing it.
yeah, they're still doing it.
Yep.
Funniest thing I saw there, I've known Steve Krause for a long time, Cornell.
Yep.
Now Steve, he's about 4'11". He was working at Jacob Manning's anvil. Now Jacob's about 6'4".
Yeah.
So I was watching Steve forge a shoe on his tiptoes because Jacob's anvil's about a chest height for him.
Yeah,
I wondered, why the heck did they pair him up? I've met a lot of good people in this. It's been so many. Like I said, I was stagnant for so long, but after I started getting more active and trying a little bit harder, I just met so many good people.
Even this event, they do set it up so that you can interact with each other, like in the sessions in between.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's the great part. The networking is so worthwhile, too.
And I find if you're feeling stagnant, there's nothing like hanging out with a bunch of other farriers
Right.
to kind of boost that. Like you're excited to go back to work,
Right.
try some new things. And
So I want to go back to 2011 also, because that's also the end of that year, I heard of a new association coming about.
right.
Okay, and I looked into that, and at the time it was called the AAPF, American Association of Professional Farriers. I'd kind of met him at one time, but I didn't know him real well yet, and that was Dave Farley.
Right.
I started messaging with him, asking him, "Hey, what's this all about? What's going on here?" He sent me back a link to the website, and he said, "Here it is. Look at us,
Mhm.
see what you think." So saw the people running it and people involved and what they were talking about, and I says, "I'm going to be a part of this." So I joined them. Actually, they launched officially January 1st of 2012. Okay,
Oh,
but they
okay.
had been putting it together. I found out they had been working and putting it together for 2 years before that. So when I joined, it was December of 2011. They hadn't launched yet. So my membership number is 78. I'm one of the first 100.
Right.
So
No kidding.
I got more involved with them and got on committees, started coming to the summit and helping them work in the booth, helping them recruit members, and been a little bit of a part of their growth, but really feel they're doing good things. There's been some ups and downs, and you'll have that in anything.
Yeah, any group of humans.
I ran for a board position a couple of years later, lost, and tried again a couple of years later, and I got it. So
Right.
2016, 2017, 2018, I was on their board.
Okay.
And I just got to travel some and make so many more new friends.
Mm-hmm.
Dave is very good friends with Roy Bloom.
Yep.
And if you've ever met Roy Bloom, that's one man that Doesn't know a stranger.
No.
He does not.
It's fun trying to walk through a crowd with Roy.
Yeah, it is. And
you don't make very much progress.
You don't. It's always stop. Hey, funny thing is, I'm finding myself that way now.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah.
Just walking through the trade show the other day, it took me about 10 minutes to get from the door down to our booth. Because
Yeah.
And one of the other board members was with me, and she was telling me, she says, "You are well known." I said, "Well, I don't really feel that way," but she says, "You can't walk 10 feet without shaking somebody's hand."
Well, and I've always known you, I think, basically through the IAPF. Like, I saw you at the booth and met you. I think I might have met you when I was talking to Kathy.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, I think that's when we first did meet, yeah. Yeah, Kathy was president for a couple of years, and yeah, my first run on the board, I was with her, and then when my term was up, you have to take a year off once your term's up.
Oh, okay.
We had it set up where you did a 3-year term, and you had to take a year off before you could get back on the board. In the meantime, we had also, the IAPF had, we had switched to the IAPF, went international, because we felt that was more what we represented was farriers all over the world. So we had a lot of Canadian members. We had a couple in Germany. We have some in Australia.
Yep.
They're all over. So that's what we want. In the process, too, we had formed a 501c3. The association's a C6 trade organization. So to be able to take more charitable donations, we formed a 501c3 we called the HoofCare Essentials Foundation.
Oh, okay.
So after my term on the board, they asked me to be on that board. So I got on that board, and I ended up chairman for almost 3 years.
Oh, okay.
So,
yeah.
But recently, this last year, they split that away, so that's on its own now. So it's kind of a separate entity at this point.
Oh, really? And what was the reasoning behind that?
Hard to explain, and that's another controversy I don't want to get into.
Okay. Oh, geez.
What they were kind of set up to do was put the clinics together. A lot of the educational clinics, which and that's what they're kind of concentrating on now.
Okay.
And there was a little bit of controversy on what its purpose was. This last year, people on the association side thought that they could just stick their money or stick their fingers in there and grab what money they wanted. And
right, yeah.
They kind of found out with me, they ran into a brick wall.
Oh, okay.
Because I knew what it was set up to do, and I knew what its purpose was, and it wasn't to just bail people out when they got in trouble. It was more to provide the education that we were founded on.
Right. Yeah.
It's all working out in the end. I mean, we're back. The association itself is back to trying to build what we started with: diverse membership, as well as opportunities to learn.
Right.
That's where I want to be. Right now, I'm on my second stint on the board as a director.
Oh, okay.
We, had some problems last year. We're working out, but they kind of contacted me around beginning of October. They said, we're having troubles here. We know your term's about up there. What are you planning on doing next? This is coming back over there. And they said, let's do it now.
Okay.
So they voted me back on the board, and I'm there.
You're
and,
back in it. Yeah.
Yeah. So
are there any new sort of projects or directions that you think you guys are going?
We have a programs that, it's called credentialing, and it gets made fun of a lot. But I try to explain it to people, it is not a certification process. We do not certify people. We credential people.
Right.
The difference is that what our program is designed to do is teach.
Right.
It doesn't test what knowledge you might have already. It's giving you the opportunity to learn and test what you're learning. And when I explain it that way to people, they kind of get it.
Right.
And the unique thing about us, too, is that if somebody wants to do the certification process, we acknowledge that and we reward it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Our credentials they started accredited farrier, which is 2 to 5 year experience, and accredited professional farrier, which is 5 years or more. Some people say, well, you're just selling credentials. No, we're not. Okay. Yeah, we grant that based on your experience, but it's up to the members to maintain it.
Right. Yes.
And they have to do 24 CE credits a year to do,
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, well, we're going to pull it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not done all the time, but, things slip through the cracks.
Right.
One of the reasons I came back is to make sure we don't slip through the cracks. Let's keep our credibility. Let's keep our integrity.
Right.
So getting back to our testing system, like the foundation credential is where we start. It's I call it a basic horseshoeing course in the palm of your hands.
Right.
It's a 340-page book, I believe, and then comes with the 395 question test. You have to get 100% on it.
Right.
And you're not getting 100% unless you read the book.
Right. Yeah.
So we give you a year to do it. It's open book. But again, if you don't read the book, you're not going to pass it.
Yeah. Right.
I've known people that tried. They didn't pass.
It didn't work out. Yeah. But it's to encourage the process of learning that, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what it is. And, I was more than 20 years into work when I took that test, and I learned a lot. And one of the most important things was I learned things that I'd forgotten.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
A lot of the younger kids will push it on. They've just been to school or they're going through school. They do a little bit better on the test a lot of times, but they remember how to take tests.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of us older guys don't.
Yeah. It is definitely a skill set that you can lose for a while.
Right. But it encourages that as well. Some critical thinking and problem solving. I mean, that's what this is all about anyway.
Yeah.
That's what the work's about.
That's our day to day. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I went through the certification process with the AFA, and I found it so helpful. When I was interviewing Dave Farley, he showed me some of the stuff that they were working on. He explained I think they had the Hunter Jumper one, just what they were doing. And I've had this conversation with Kathy a few times where I said, there is a group of people that are never going to do the AFA certifications. They have no interest in it.
Right.
But you guys you're offering something that they will do.
Yeah.
And so it's just another chance to bring up the knowledge base of the farriers that are in our community. So I think either camp or both camps, if you can do both, as long as you're doing something like that,
mm-hmm.
I think you can't help but get better. And like you said, when you were feeling stagnant, it will get you out of that rut.
It'll get you out of that rut for sure. Yeah.
It just gets you thinking again. And
yeah, and this program, like I said, was designed. It's got the foundation. You can stop there if you want.
Mm-hmm.
We so far have 4 more tiers to it, or what we call stackables.
Okay.
The first one to come out was the Hunter Jumper.
Right.
Then the next one was the dressage, and then the forging. And now the forging is bringing a lot of the AFA and the competitor guys in.
Right.
And now we recently released a nutrition, which was written by Life Data Labs for us.
Oh, okay.
That one's 100% written, but I just recently completed that one. I am impressed with that one because I learned a lot of things I did not know that I wish I'd have known years ago.
Right.
I kind of knew how the digestive tract and things worked, but I didn't know about how many of the nutrients and vitamins the horse's own body is able to make if you just feed them right.
Right.
Yeah. The area where I'm at here in Ohio, it's in the rain belt of the country, so there's a lot of green from around April till the end of October. There's a lot of green.
Right.
And so I see a lot of laminitis.
A lot of horses trying to fall through.
And I see a lot of horses getting killed with kindness. Yeah. So that's going to help me a lot in my business.
Yeah. And explaining it so the clients understand. It's amazing how many times I've seen it myself and then other fellow farriers where you explain that and they still are hesitant to cut back on the food.
Right. I did do the Hunter Jumper and the dressage ones.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
How we do those two is we have different levels of those you can do. You can just do the knowledge base, which is the book and the test, the written, and we do it the same way. The books aren't quite as bulky or the tests aren't quite as long, but it's still the same. You have to get 100%. You do it at your own pace and open book. It's not designed to fail you. It's designed to teach you.
Right. Yeah, right.
The practicals, which I did on both, is we give you our templates, a front and hind pattern, which looks more like a warm blood than a quarter horse.
Right.
So that kind of confused me because I'm a quarter horse guy.
Right, yeah.
But I mean, it worked out. The mods you do is in your own style. You draw your clips your way. You build your bar shoes your way. If you weld in bar shoes, if you use, I did a lot of forge welding on bar shoes before I figured out how to make them, and just by playing around myself. But if you want to hand make everything, you hand make it. If you want to do it all in cake shoes, you do it that way.
Right.
If you want to buy a rolled toe shoe, you buy that. If you want to roll it yourself, you do that. You show us your style. So there's not a wrong way to do it. The only right way is to make it fit the template to the parameters we give you.
Right.
Okay. After you get those tested, you send them to, we don't call them testers, we call them mediators. Once they say, yeah, these look good, then we'll set up a test site when we have enough candidates where we do a roundtable discussion. You discuss what was in the book, what you learned there. You discuss your shoe mods, and then you draw from a hat a couple shoe mods, and we give you another one, and you do them right on site.
Oh, okay. Yep.
The nice thing about that is, again, you do your shoe mods while everybody else is. You can look around, watch how they're doing things, and you all get to walk around with your mods and look at everybody else's and see, okay, maybe I can do this a little different. Maybe I can do this a little better. But
right.
You all get that opportunity to see how everybody else is doing it.
Oh, cool. And when you do a session like that, you said when you have enough candidates, how big of a group is it typically?
Let's see, the last one we did was in Ohio on the dressage, and we had, I think, around 10 or 11, maybe 12 of us.
Yeah, that's a decent sized group.
Yeah, it was a good group.
Yeah.
And it wasn't too big that it was so out of hand.
Mhm.
It was,
Yeah.
We tried to keep it that way. So
For your mediators, right? I guess it's like any other association where you have just like a few spaced out throughout the country, and then you get them together and
yeah, that's how it is. They have to have done the test themselves and gotten the credential themselves. And the other thing about ours is we put an expiration date on it, on the practical part. I think it's 3 years. You have to just show up at a test site and do it again.
Oh, okay. To renew the right. Okay. Gotcha. Yeah, 'cause that's one of the kind of unique things about the IAPF is the continuing education credits, and it's about maintaining that knowledge base once
Exactly.
you have it, right? Like to keep educating yourself. And you guys also have a really neat program that I've seen in motion where if one of your members gets hurt, you arrange for other members to kind of get together
Mhm.
and work to keep their book going.
Yeah, it's Farrier assistance, and that's exactly what it was designed to do. If we try to stress the fact that it's not a handout, it's a hand up.
Yeah,
If
right.
you get in trouble and you need help, we're going to be here. I've participated in that as well, where somebody got hurt, they couldn't work, and they're getting behind. Yeah, we'll jump in. We'll come to your aid. It's not a rule, but most of the time we'll come do the work and we'll say, okay, so Joe's over here hurt. He can't work. He's your guy. You write the check to him.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
and that's how I saw it work back home too. Yeah.
it's not a mandatory thing. Somebody wants to go and shoe a couple horses and get paid for it. That's up to them, but
Right.
that's not how we like to roll.
Yeah.
We like to say, yeah, we're going to help you. And most of us realize that it's a volunteer thing when we do it. It's not, I have a story like that myself. I got injured once,
Oh, okay.
2007, I suffered a broken hip. And
Oh, yikes.
so I was down for 10 weeks. I could not get under a horse for 10 weeks. And I had 2 guys in my area that covered for me. I never saw a dime from either of them. Okay. They had both been apprentices under me for a while.
Oh, okay.
One actually, when I got back on my feet, worked with me again, helped me out. But the other one, he wasn't just taking everything he could. He was trying to poach all the work he could.
Right. Yeah.
He actually did me quite a bit of a favor because, he was one of those people that was a whole lot fonder of himself than anybody else was. So, as he's trying to brag himself up and tell people that he did so much better work than I did and treated the horses so much better than I did and they were going to like him so much more, they were calling me and saying, get this guy out of here.
Right.
He's an idiot. And
Yeah, it's funny when that backfires because you don't have that attitude, and you're a pretty humble guy.
Thanks.
And yeah, so your clientele, you found your people, and they're not going to enjoy that kind of personality.
No, they
right?
didn't enjoy him at all.
And if it was somebody who was going to go off and take his word for it that he was the greatest, you probably were better off without them as a client anyway.
Yeah, but I got every one of them back.
Yeah. Well, and we had a similar situation when Elisa up my way got her head injury. All the farriers in the community got together and helped her out. We would do days, and just like 4 people would show up and just knock off a whole bunch of horses. And the one place where she actually got injured, another guy came, like they fired her. Another game came without contacting her. He knew what had happened to her.
Oh my, yeah.
And took that business. I wouldn't wish ill will on anybody, but man, I hope he never hurts himself, because nobody's going to come to your aid.
Him, no.
Yeah, those situations when you see that everybody kind of come together, you have a fun day, and you know you're doing a good turn for somebody. And as Kathy says, we're each other's insurance policy.
We are. Yeah, we are.
More often than not, you will end up having to cash that check.
Oh, you will
yourself, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
on a long enough timeline.
Yeah, one of the last ones I was involved with was an Amish guy here in Ohio. Good guy. I've known him, and he had a draft horse hurt his back. He couldn't, just sprained muscle or something to where he couldn't bend over. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
He had to take, I think, about a month off, and he got behind. We gathered 2 crews. One of the other guys went down one weekend with a crew, and about a 4-hour drive from us, close. I think he was around Zanesville area, which is here on the river too, maybe an hour or so to the east of here. I think I can't remember exactly where it's at, but it's down this neck of the woods. When we're up around, like I said, about a 4-hour drive from here.
Right.
Yeah, he took a crew down one weekend. They knocked out a bunch. His business was mostly buggy horses. I was going to take a crew the next week, and before I could even think about it, I had 2 Amish folks up my way call me, and they were brothers, and they said, "Hey, we're going to help. We're not members. Can we help?" And I said, "You can most definitely help."
Right. Yeah.
So I got them, and then another English fella came with me, and then there was another Amish fella had found a friend with a rig that he could take down. So.
Oh, okay. So you had quite the crew.
We did, and we had 3 different stops to make, because he had arranged, like the stop I went to, he had arranged for, I think there were 6 buggy horses and a pony there to get shot all the way around. I sent one of the other crews over to a quarter horse farm where they had 7 trims to do.
Okay.
And he ran over there and knocked them out, and then the other Amish fella, he went with the guy that was hurt because he could get up and around, but he just couldn't get under the horses. And they knocked out a few buggy horses while they were there. But the crew I helped, the 2 brothers, they just tied 2 horses up and went to town, and I started working on another one. And by the time I got that one buggy horse done, they each had 2 done.
Yeah.
But they don't mess around when they get under those things. But,
No.
I told him, I said, "This is my style of horse to do, but I'll get it done."
Yeah.
And I did, yeah. But it just, in the end of the day, then, it just gives you a good feeling.
Yeah.
It really does. Guy that did, whose barn we had stopped at, he asked, "Now, how do we pay this?" And I said, "You pay Atlee." I said, "You pay him whatever you normally pay him." So he made a list of all the horses we did, what we did to him, and he says, "Okay, we'll get them taken care of."
Yeah, it's neat to see the clients when they experience that. It's eye-opening for them.
Oh, yeah.
You hear a lot of them say, "I work in such and such industry, and there's no way in hell we would do that for each other," right?
Yeah, one of the things I looked at too was when I started actually getting more involved in the associations was, how can I pay this forward?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
This trade's been good to me.
Yeah.
I can't argue. It just been really good to me. I actually went to school in Kentucky in 1988.
Okay.
I only went down there to learn enough to shoe my own horses. Went down there on their 2-week course because that's all I wanted to do. I guess we never started at the beginning here.
No, well, I was
Yeah.
actually, just before you said that, I was like, actually, that's a pretty good segue. How did you get your start?
Yeah. How I got my start. I mentioned to you earlier that I grew up downtown Canton in the city.
Mm-hmm.
I was a street kid. I was one of 6 kids.
Oh, okay.
I tell everybody I'm thick-headed and thick-skinned because I grew up Irish Catholic. So you're not going to insult me. You're not going to upset me, and don't butt heads with me.
Right.
You're going to lose. So
Yeah.
I was actually raised by what I call a little Irishman that proved that the Irish temper was not a myth. My dad was only 5'7", but
Oh, really?
maybe went 150 pounds. Yeah.
And you're not a small man.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
But I'll get to that story too. But Dad was the youngest of 7, and he was the only one that was not an alcoholic.
Oh, okay.
And his dad was an alcoholic. My grandfather was the son of an Irish immigrant. Okay, he'd grown up in Cleveland, Ohio. When my great-grandfather had come over from Ireland with his parents when he was young, and they settled in Cleveland. My great-grandfather ended up a boilermaker on the shipyards of Cleveland.
Okay.
His job was to crawl inside the boilers and poke the hot rivets through the hole while somebody out on the outside flattened them.
Oh.
So he stood inside of a bell ringing for all of his career
Oh my gosh.
with no hearing protection.
Of course. Yeah.
So I never got to meet him, but my uncle did tell me that by the time he passed that he was stone deaf.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. So that's where that came from. And then my grandfather, he was I think he was one of 7 also.
Okay. Yeah.
He went off to fight World War I. He met a friend there and ended up coming back with him. They were from Pennsylvania, a Pennsylvania Dutch family. And that's where he met my grandfather. It was his fellow's sister.
Oh, okay.
So my grandmother was actually Pennsylvania Dutch.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so we have quite a bit of history. So,
yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
like I said, grandfather was an alcoholic. They ended up, when my dad was very young, they ended up getting a divorce, which was not done in the 1930s.
Right.
Especially in the Catholic Church.
Right.
But she just had enough and she couldn't take it anymore. Well, subsequently, my dad ended up in foster care.
Oh.
So he really never had a father figure. And the only really male influence he had was his older brothers, who ended up being alcoholics also. And what he did enjoy was sports. So he liked baseball, he liked basketball. Dad ended up a coach at 15 years old. Yeah, after he got out of grade school, went into high school, started coaching the grade school.
Oh, okay.
And he did that for almost 70 years.
Holy,
and
wow.
He ended up coaching football, basketball, track, baseball, whatever they threw at him, he would say, okay, I'm going to do it. And several generations from my town knew my father. And, they hear my name today, they ask, who was your dad? And I'll just say Coach, and they'll know who I was talking about.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody ever knew him as anything else.
Yeah. That's quite the legacy.
Yeah, it was pretty good. So, he was kind of a craftsman himself. He did body work on cars when I was growing up, and he would take me into the shop with him. He'd put me as soon as I could stand high enough to reach a fender of a car, he'd hand me a piece of sandpaper, and he'd tell me, now you sand this fender.
Right.
And you tell me when you think it's done. And I'd sand on it, and I'd say, okay, Dad. And he'd come over, he'd rub his hand on it and say, that's not good enough, keep going. And he said, let me see your sandpaper. And I'd hand him the sandpaper, he'd look at it, rub his hand on it. It's still good, keep going. I had to have the thing worn down to nothing before he'd give me a new piece.
Yeah.
He had a feel where he would rub his hand on that fender, and if it wasn't right, he'd tell me, it's not right.
Yeah, right.
That paint's not going to stick. You keep going. So I always say I got my work ethic from my dad.
Trained in India.
He did. He always told me, don't come back and do it second time. Do it right the first time.
Mm-hmm.
I just lost him last year.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It was tough, but
no kidding. I'm sorry, Mike.
I owe everything to him. That's that side. And then I never really got to know my grandfather on that side. I'd only met him a couple times. I did have my grandfather on Mom's side that he was quite a character as well. Dad always said when he met Mom and wanted to take her out, first thing he did was, ask her out. And then she said, well, you have to come and meet Dad. So he said when he knocked on the door and the door swung open and there was no light coming through, he was kind of confused until he looked up, and my grandfather was 6'3" and 300 pounds.
Okay.
So
this is where your size
That's where my
comes from.
size comes from. And, Dad being, into sports and such, he says he knew right then he was going to marry Mom because he wanted big kids. It worked out for him.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had my growing spurt in grade school, and I was still playing sports with him. Whenever we got a picture together, he wouldn't let me stand by him because I was a head taller of him already.
Right.
So, he did like that. He was proud of that. And I have 2 older sisters that actually grew taller than him too, and he wasn't too happy about that. But but then 2 younger brothers. I mean, we all got to be pretty good size, and he was proud of that.
Right.
He said, "Yep, I fathered these guys."
Yeah, it gets harder and harder to reprimand your kids when they're looming over you.
Well, I found out the hard way that it wasn't so hard for him.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. When I got bigger and mouthed off once, that was the last time I did it. So,
Okay.
like I said, he was good at proving that Irish temper was real.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, so growing up in the city, how did you get into horses then?
This is the other part, the 2 main male influences of my life, my dad and my grandfather. One thing Dad loved was the old Westerns.
Okay.
And I grew up in that era when, the shows like Gunsmoke, Bonanza, Rawhide, The Rifleman, those were all on TV. And we watched all of them.
Yeah.
Dad loved those shows. I came to find out years later that one of the foster homes Dad was on was a riding stable.
Oh, okay.
I never knew he'd ever been on the back of a horse until he was 65 years old. So, getting back to my grandfather on Mom's side, he had grown up in West Virginia during the Depression. He had several jobs then. And the funny thing is that his dad was actually a very prominent man, had been a state senator.
Oh, wow.
Had owned several businesses, but when the stock market crashed, he did too.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he lost a lot, but he still had a lot. Grandpa, in the meantime, he'd started working. He worked in the coal mines a little bit. He actually went to work as a blacksmith for a while.
Okay.
One thing I have sitting on my coffee table is a hammer that he made.
Oh,
He was an
cool.
apprentice blacksmith, yeah. And I've never struck steel with it myself.
Yeah.
I mean, he would not give that thing to me as long as he was alive, but once he passed, I grabbed it. But
Mhm.
the story he had told me was that he was working as an apprentice blacksmith, and there was 2 of them, and the master came to both of them and said, "You guys each need to make a hammer, and I'm going to judge the hammer, and whichever one makes the nicer hammer, you get to be the blacksmith." So not be an apprentice anymore. So he always told me that hammer won him that position.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty
But
cool.
yeah,
Coffee
that was.
table.
Yeah.
Piece.
He liked to gamble. And I found out, too, that his father was a gambler on the riverboats. But
Oh, okay.
so he liked to play cards and he liked to play the lottery. But one of the things he liked to do was go to the racetrack. So when I was a teenager and during the summer, he was retired and he'd call me, "Hey." He never called me Mike because his name was Andrew and that's my middle name. So he called me Little Andy. So he would call me, "Hey, Little Andy, you want to go to the racetrack with me?" So he'd go to the racetrack and we'd sit there watching horse races all day long while he bet on them and went home without any money usually.
Yeah.
But he had a system. He had 3 daughters, my mom, Mary Ann, and the middle one, Nancy, and the youngest one, Patricia. If a horse had one of those names, he'd bet on it. And
Okay.
he was almost always winning on that, but any other he never won on.
Right.
So,
Don't mess with the system.
anyway, that really got me to kind of liking horses, loving horses. I always loved the looks of them. I always wanted one, and I always asked Dad for one. Where the hell are we going to put it? We can't have a horse. You can't. It was one of those things, too. We were pretty much dirt poor. Dad worked constantly. Mom never did. He insisted that she stay home and raise us 6 kids. So
Right. Yeah.
he never let her have a job.
That
but,
would be a full-time gig in
it
itself.
was. Yeah, it pretty much was. And but looking back, the home cooked meals and everything else,
Yeah.
you can't beat that.
No.
And you can't get it today as much as you did back then. But,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, but Dad was away a lot, and he worked a lot, and his regular job worked for the county, and he worked his way up through the ranks there, as from a laborer all the way up to superintendent. So
Okay.
he put 30 years into that job.
All while he was coaching
Yeah, and that was all volunteer.
everything.
He never took a dime for
okay.
that. So
Wow. Okay.
so that was, I learned how to work hard and
Yeah.
work right,
Right.
I guess.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Right.
mhm.
Did you know that's what you wanted to do? Was to shoe horses?
Actually, yeah, this is the rest of the story. This is my second career.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Dad, like I said, was a body man. I got interested in cars. In high school, I took the auto mechanic course, and that's what I did. Once I got out, I fixed cars every day. So I was working in that trade about 10 years. I went through the certification process there. I was a certified master mechanic.
Oh, okay. You're a handy guy to know.
I tell people, they ask me if there's anything I can't do. I said, yeah, I can't polish a desk chair with my butt. That's what I can't do.
Yeah,
If you need something fixed, I can likely do it.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of compare myself more to the ancient Irish tinker. He was the guy that would travel around, could do anything from fix a cuckoo clock to shoe a horse.
Right.
I'm that guy. If it's mechanical, I can take it apart and figure out how it works and get it back together. I can probably fix it.
Right.
But
you got the brain for that.
Yeah.
And yeah, that completely, it makes sense when I'm sure your perspective when you're looking at a horse and certain issues and stuff, that probably comes into play a lot, right?
Yeah, sure it does. Mm-hmm. And what happened there was, as I got a little bit older, I was in my early 20s, I met a young country girl that was into horses. And she knew some guys that rodeoed. And, when we started dating and we started hanging out at this rodeo arena by us, and I'm like, this looks like fun. I think I might start trying this. And so after we were married, I would hang out there constantly. I'd work the shoots or just whatever, just to be around and be part of it.
Yeah.
She was teaching me to ride in the process, so I got decent at riding. And one day, one of the guys handed me an old rope and said, "Here, learn how to use this." So I started playing with that, and like, yeah, this is fun. So finally found a rope horse and did a little bit of team roping, did a little bit of tie down, and I got into steer wrestling just a little bit. That was a lot of fun, but I started seeing guys get too banged up with that. And then, like I said, I did some tie down, but then when I really got into team roping more, it was like, I don't have to get off my horse for this. Why do I want to jump off a perfectly good horse when I could just sit here, throw my rope, and be done?
Right.
So I started doing that, and I did that for a little over 20 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I had fun with that. It was more fun than anything. I never got overly serious about it. I just loved doing it.
Right.
And I competed quite a bit. I always spent more money than I ever was going to win someday.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
I'd gotten a nice quarter horse I was roping off of, and we had this guy shoeing our horses that we thought was good. He was a little bit too fond of the brown bottle.
Oh, yeah.
Sometimes he would actually showed up so plowed he couldn't really get under the horses.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, so that was not good. But this nice horse I had finally bought and spent a lot of my savings on just so I could have my fun. He was just really off once right after I had him done. I had no idea what was wrong with him. I was as green as the spring grass. I had no clue.
Yeah.
Why this horse wasn't moving right, why he didn't want to work for me. And there was this old fella that hung around the arena. He was an old trainer, old horseman, and just one of those people that was a book of knowledge. I mean, he just, anything you could ask him, he would find you an answer for.
Right.
So I asked him, I said, watch my horse. Tell me what you think's wrong. So he's watching me that night, and when I got off and tied him up, he walks over, and he starts walking around the horse looking down at his feet. I says, "Carl, why are you looking at his feet?" He says, "You need a new blacksmith." I says, "Huh?" And he says, "You need a new blacksmith." I said, "What makes you say that?" I got a good one. He says, "No, you don't." He said, "You need a new one. You need one that knows what they're doing." I said, "What's wrong?" He says, "Not a damn one of this horse's angles is right." I said, "How do you know that?" And he squats down and he says, "Look at this pastern, and then look at this hoof. They're not the same." I said, "So?" He said, "They got to be the same. If they're not the same, this horse ain't going to work." He was right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like I said, I had no clue. I just knew this guy come and slap those shoes on my horse, and I could go riding.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, one of the guys that roped with us, that is a big family that owned this arena. They were an excavating company, and so all the guys worked on bulldozers and diggers and whatever heavy equipment they had. That's what they worked on. One of them had been to shoeing school, and he did all the horses there. So I hollered at him. I says, "Come and look at my horse." And he looks down. He says, "Who done that?" He says, "You way overdue." I said, "No, he just done last week." He's, "Get this horse into my shop." So he reshot him there, and I'm like, wow.
When you know what you're looking for.
Yeah,
right?
and I just didn't realize, how bad a job this guy did. So he got fired right away. Finding somebody then was tough. Everybody in the area, the better ones were long footers, so they didn't know how to shoe a quarter horse. You don't want that kind of work done on that type of horse. I mean, it's great for what they do, and they're great at what they do, but if you can't keep that quarter horse sound, you're not much good to me.
Yeah, you can't play with it.
Yeah. So I kept asking this fella, teach me just enough so I can do this myself. Nah, I ain't doing that. He said, go to school. I said, I can't afford school for one thing, and I'm working. I can't go to school. I says, how'd you do it? He says, well, Uncle Gus laid me off one year, and I went to school. Well, every time I'd ask him to do the horse for me, he was, I don't have time. I don't want to do that. I don't need the money. He gave me nothing but excuses, and then I'd have to twist his arm till he did it. And that was, like I said, around 1988, the economy started sinking.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So I went to work one day. I was working for a private shop. There was about 3 of us, and we were pretty busy shop, but all of a sudden we noticed, work not coming in and different things happening. And one day the boss come in, gathered us around, and he says, every car in here's got to go out today. You got to get everything done. And we're like, why? Because there's no tomorrow. We're locking the doors.
Oh, wow. Well, thanks for the notice, boss.
Yeah, that was, thanks, asshole. But anyway, that one of the best things that ever happened to me.
Right, because there's your opportunity.
It also forced me into the unemployment line.
Okay.
At that time, you had to show up and stand in line every week.
Oh, wow.
And I always say that was the most humiliating experience of my life because I was not raised that way.
Right.
I was raised that you work and you pull your weight.
Yeah.
And I wasn't, and that disgusted me. One of the things you had to do to get that check was show that you had applied for jobs somewhere, at least 2 places every week. And I was hitting more than that, and nobody was hiring.
Right.
The economy.
Yeah.
So I started looking around. I didn't have much money. I was drawing a check that was just enough to get me and the wife at the time by, and that was it. And she worked too, so we weren't struggling too bad, but we were just making our bills and nothing else. So I had to put things on hold, like my roping and other things that she wanted to do. She liked to do contesting, and we couldn't do that. So just, making the car payments and the house payment, that was it.
Right.
I kept thinking about it, and I started looking at schools. And they were anywhere from, 6, 8 weeks. And at the time, they started around $1,500, which is money I did not have. But then I found this course at Kentucky. Don Canfield was running at the time. It was a 2-week course, $500. And I said, I think I can do that. I started looking into what I had, and I had a life insurance policy I could borrow against. And so I did that. I borrowed $700. I took that 2-week course, lived off of peanut butter and oatmeal for for a couple of weeks, and came home, but I didn't have any tools.
And you came back without any tools? Oh, wow.
Yeah, so,
okay.
because they supplied the tools there.
Right.
And I always say I learned enough to be dangerous, but I could get a horse shod.
Mm-hmm.
I only wanted to do ours, so we had 5 at that time. I was going to save me a bit, so I thought, well, we'll start with this. I don't know what I'm going to do. And when I got back, one of the old guys that hung out the roping arena, he walks up to me and says, well, how'd you do? I says, I like it. I says, I'm going to try, doing a few here and there and do my own. And he says, you got any tools yet? And I said, no. And this old guy did his own horses. And he says, you need to go to this auction this week. I said, where? He said, well, it's not too far from you. It was an old blacksmith. He died. His wife's auctioning his stuff off. So I went to that auction, spent $400. I got an anvil, 125-pound anvil. I still have today.
Oh, yeah.
And there's another story with that. But found a box of wore-out tools with an apron. I'm like, I'm ready to go.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. So that's how I got going. And that was late summer. It was around August of '88. And while I was at the school, like I said, Don Canfield was running it. He was getting up in years. He was ready to retire.
Mm-hmm.
His wife was sick. Well, she died while I was there.
Oh, wow.
He had to take some time off, and that's when he contacted Mitch Taylor. Mitch Taylor came in.
Oh, okay.
He subbed for a couple of days, and I ran into him here every year, and I stop and talk to him. Funniest story is Don had an old school bus that he had converted. He took the back seats out, and we had all the forges and anvils and tools in there, and that's where we'd run to the farms to work on horses.
Oh, okay.
And Don usually drove it himself, but one of the students had a CDL, so he could drive it. And he knew where we were going that day, and Mitch was running late, and we're all sitting in the school bus waiting. And finally, this guy in the driver's seat, he says, "Screw it, I'm going. He can catch up with us." So he takes off in the school bus. We get about 10 miles down the road, and here's Mitch coming the other way in his little van he had set up for shoeing. He sees that bus going. He spins his van around, chases it down. So every time I see him, I ask him, "Hey, Mitch, you miss any school buses lately?" His answer is always the same: "You son of a bitch." He grabbed me this year when I walked by his booth, and he says, "Mike, I got to take a picture with you." I says, "Why is that?" He says, "I think you're one of my oldest students here." I said, "Yeah, you're right, because I was there. I was learning from you before you bought the school." So, after Don retired, he took that school and did an incredible job of expanding it. He's really done quite a bit of good with that program.
Yeah, made quite a name for himself. And
so anyway, at the end of my 2 weeks that time, Don took me aside, me and one other student aside, and he says, "I know I didn't spend as much time with you as I could or I should have." And he says, "So you got a free week coming."
Oh.
So I went home for a couple of weeks, did some odd jobs, got some money together, and went back for a week. Yeah,
oh, okay.
Yeah, so
cool. With your own tools, probably that.
Yeah,
time.
that time I did. Yeah, yeah. I had to borrow money to buy those too. But yeah, I mean, I went to this auction and I saw all this stuff, and so I got my basic hand tool set, and they were not totally worn out, but they were close. Yeah, getting there. And then, but I picked up this anvil there. It was 125 pound. It was a Farrier anvil, round horn, clip horn.
Mm-hmm.
The name was scratched off of it, so I never found out what it was. And here, just a couple of years ago, I found a serial number on it, and I called my friend Tim and says, "I found a serial number on this old anvil. Can you tell me what it is?" He says, "Oh man," he says, "you got a treasure." I said, "Huh? You got a Hay Biden Farrier anvil."
Oh, really?
I'm like, "Oh, cool. I'm glad I kept that thing."
Yeah.
Paid $195 for that thing in '88. Yeah. So
I think you did all right.
Yeah, I did. But that's on a stump in my shop now. I still have it and still use
really?
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they don't wear out too easy when they're a good one, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Guess the other thing I wanted to say is that, like I said, when I come back and I start doing some work, I tell people I became a horseshoer out of necessity, but I became a full-time farrier by accident. So what happened was, I got back into rope, and I actually got a job, started working again at a car dealership. And
Okay.
But I just kept growing more and more tired of that work, and the cars were changing so much, and it was hard to keep up with the technology. And I started, putting my name out there and just doing part-time. It helped, feed my rodeo habit, and ended up getting divorced too. So I was back to being single. That was fun. And that was a lot of fun. But I started picking up work. And so I was working at shop from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. I was leaving there about 5, shoeing a couple horses every night. It got to be every single night.
Right.
Then all day Saturday. And I started looking at the money, and $11 an hour job versus, what I'm making shoeing a horse. And I'm like, it's a little bit better. So what I decided to do after 6 years in that shop, I thought, I'm going to try something. May is my anniversary. That's when they give me my vacation pay. I'm going to try something. So I started banking my paycheck in a savings account, living off of what I was making part-time. So I started that in September, and by May, I hadn't touched any of my paychecks.
Right.
And I says, it's time.
Yeah. That's a pretty good litmus test right there.
Yeah. And I thought, if I can make it part-time, imagine what I can do if I jump in this with both feet. So Yeah, like I said, when the guy had him my vacation pay, he says, "How long you been here now?" I said, 6 years. He says, "Well, it's been good to have you." And I says, "I hate to tell you, but that's the last one of those you're going to hand me." And he looks at me funny, and I said, "I'm giving you my week's notice." He says, "You're leaving us?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Where are you going?" I said, "On my own." And the funny thing is, they knew what I did part-time.
Right.
And I told him, I says, "I'm just going to jump in with my own business." And he says, "You think that's smart?" I said, "I'm going to find out." And he says, "What if it doesn't work out?" He says, "Cross that bridge when I get it there." He says, "You always have a job here."
Ah,
So he said, "If you ever need to come back, you just come and see me."
yeah.
That was a bridge I did not burn.
Yeah.
So I always say the week later, I after the workday was done, I pulled my truck into that shop. I loaded my big toolbox on the back of it. When I was driving home, I kind of looked in my rearview mirror, saw that big toolbox sitting there, and thought, that's my whole life back there up to this point.
Right.
I'm not looking back ever again. And I never did.
Yeah.
I've always looked forward with no regrets.
Mm-hmm.
It worked.
Well, it's funny because I have a kind of a similar story to, like, I was selling horse trailers and met a farrier who I sold a trailer to. And when I decided that that's what I was going to do, my boss, good family friend, he said, "I'd be happier if you were going to work for the competition." He said, "I think you're making the worst mistake of your life. You're going to get injured. What if people don't pay you? All this stuff." And then he sent all of his friends to come talk to me at various points and explain why I was being an idiot to do what I was doing.
Yeah.
And I knew I didn't want to be there, and I knew I was looking for that career that was going to be the answer.
Mhm.
So I had, a very similar, people thought it was crazy,
Yeah.
but look now, it's done so much for
Right.
both of us, right?
I ended up buying the house I live in now in 2008 when the market was down. I bought it. Well, no, it was 2009. Market was down, so I got a good deal on it. The house was 7 acres, and I've done a lot of work to it, but I was 48 years old at that time, and I decided that house was going to be paid off before I hit 60.
Mm-hmm.
And a month before my 60th birthday, which was 11 years later, I walked into the bank and I wrote the final check on that house.
Yeah.
What other business is going to let you do that?
Right.
I mean, they're out there, but it's given me a good lifestyle. And one of the things I also saw when I started getting involved with the associations is this is a way I can pay back.
Yeah.
And help somebody else in the trade. And if it's nothing more than to help them not make mistakes that I've made.
Right. Yeah.
That's going to be worthwhile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No kidding.
So.
Yeah, that is a good pay it forward thing, because you can see stuff coming up for people and you're like, no, I've done this. This isn't the way to do it. This portion of the podcast is called the Stratum Tectorium. These are the short answer, surface stuff questions, but it's okay if the guest wants to go deeper. Enjoy. So what's your favorite book?
I have a lot of them because I'm an avid reader, but probably one of my favorites is called Blood on the Shamrock. It's a fictional story of the Irish War of Independence.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a very good story. Yeah. Yeah, I like to read. I have a very large library of horseshoeing books.
Yeah, right.
Anyone I can find, I buy.
Yeah.
But I like novels. I like Westerns, but my mom was an avid reader, and that was when she had gave me to read once, and I really enjoyed it.
It's the standout.
Mm-hmm.
What's your favorite brand of nails?
I like the Delta. I've used several different kinds over the years, but I always go back to them. Being the horses I shoe, I do a lot of quarter horses still. Since I've quit competing so much, I'm not doing so many ropers. I still have a lot of barrel racers, but the 5 Slims they fit the shoes I nail on them, and they hold good, and they don't tear the feet up. So
right,
and they drive nice. So I kind of
why change it?
Yeah, why change? Yeah. So
what shoe sizes do you generally have to stock the most of?
Double aught to 1. Those are the feet I see. The biggest shoe, I think I have one pair of size 3s on my truck at this time.
Okay.
I have one trail horse that wears a 3 up front, and the rest of them, the biggest one next to that's a 2. But I had done some drafts for a while, but I've totally gotten out of them. I'm 62 years old. I don't want to do anything that big anymore.
Yeah. You can only have so much fun.
Right.
What's your favorite make of rasp?
I knew that one was coming, and I've had a few over the years. I started out with the Simmons, which were made here in Ohio at the old Heller plant.
Hmm.
Then they got sold to Mustad, and I switched over to Save Edge, and I used them for a while. And then one of the clinics I was at, one of the door prizes was a Heller green tag, so I won that, and I tried that. That's what I use now.
That's funny. It's always the answer.
It's always the answer.
Yeah, you just had a longer route to get there.
Yeah, right.
What's your dream Farrier rig?
One I just got last year.
Oh, cool.
I finally got myself a Stonewall body.
Oh, okay.
It was funny because I'd been looking for a couple of years. I contacted Brent at Bay Horse, and he was just so busy. He says, Mike, I can't build you one. I'm just too backed up. He says, you're on Facebook, aren't you? I said, yeah. He says, look on their sites. He says, they got used ones pop up for every once in a while. That's your best bet. So I looked, and almost every time I found one, I'd contact them, and then, well, sorry, it's gone. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, one came up a couple of years ago it was a shorter body. It was a 6.5 foot body on an old Chevy truck, and it was over in Pennsylvania, which is not too far. I looked at it, and I'm like, that's a good price, $12,000, truck and all. So I contacted the lady, I called her, and we talked. She said, well, it was my dad's. He passed away. I'm just trying to liquidate stuff. And I says, okay. I says, would you mind meeting me halfway? And she said, oh, we can do that. So we arranged to meet up. Funny thing is, I had a pretty good feeling from the pictures and such that I was going to buy this truck. So I had the cash in an envelope, and so we met up, and I looked it over, and I said, oh, I think I want this. So we sit in the cab of the truck. I got the envelope here. I says, I have the cash right here. I says, it's what you ask. I says, I'm not going to argue the price because it's worth it. I says, do you want to count it? And she looks in the envelope. She says, I trust you. Gave me the title, and I drove it home. So that was on a 2003 Chevy half-ton.
Okay.
So it wasn't a heavy enough truck for the body. But her dad did a lot of Arabs and Morgans, and she said his barns were close, and he didn't. But it had almost 300,000 miles on it.
Wow.
So I knew right then and there I was going to put it on a different truck. So I'm a Dodge man. That's what I drive, and I like my Dodge diesels, my Rams. So I took the pictures of this thing to the dealer, and I says, I need a truck to put this body on. And I gave the guy the measurements and everything, and he runs some numbers for me. He says, I can put you in this cabin chassis. You won't have to worry about getting the bed off. And, And he says, this will work for you. And he says, gave me the price just a little over $50,000. I said, let's do it. So 2 months later, when this truck come in, and he called me, I looked at it, and I said, those frame rails are too long.
Oh, no.
And he says, well, it's what you ordered. I says, dumbass, it's what you ordered for me after I showed you the picture.
Yeah.
I'd been dealing with Dick Fenn guy some. And so I called him and said, here's what happened, Dick. He says, get him up to Stonewall. We'll make it work for you.
Oh, cool.
So they took that old body off that old truck, found the old bed for it, put it back on. And what they ended up doing was build an extension on the front of that.
Oh, okay.
So they matched it all up and redid the skirts, and it didn't have a swing out, an anvil swing out, but I says, I want that because I'm tired of picking a 100-pound anvil up. And so
done it enough times.
Yeah. And but they put it all together, and you can't tell. I mean, I got a little extra storage in it. And I mean, it had a torch on it, which I do some drill tech and some welding.
Oh, okay.
It had a bandsaw, which I ended up taking out and replacing, but it was an old one that I couldn't make work. It had a nice jet grinder with a belt sander on it, drill press, built-in propane tank, and Pro Forge. Everything was there.
Right.
I saved a few $1,000 by doing what I did because it cost quite a bit to retrofit it.
Right.
But
still.
It's still, and I didn't have the waiting period.
Exactly. You didn't have the 2-year waiting.
Yeah, I got no regrets about it. But I said, when I bought that, I said, this is my retirement truck. This one's going to last me until I quit. Right. And hopefully that's only, I'm planning on going about another 8 years.
Right.
And after that, I think I'm going to be done. I think I'll have done enough.
Right. Yeah. Done enough horses.
Mm-hmm.
Favorite rounding hammer, other than the one on your coffee table?
Well, see, that one's more of a sledge.
Oh, right. But,
I'm an avid collector. So I have a big rack full of rounding hammers, but my very favorite is a 2-pound Heller.
Oh, okay.
An antique 2-pound Heller. And I have one in the rig, and I've got like 3 Hellers in my rig, and they're all 2-pounders. I just have a affinity for swinging that 2-pound hammer.
Right.
And
okay.
But I have several in the shop, and one that I have in the shop that I'm very fond of is a I'd taken a little course that Dennis Manning, had taught, and he helped me make a nice handmade rounding hammer. We made out of a diesel wrist pin.
Cool.
Yeah, it's a cool hammer. And
Yeah.
I try not to hit that with too much because of the history of it.
Right. Yeah.
But I was struggling to get one made, and he came over and he says, "Let's get this done for you." And so
Cool.
he held tools. I did the striking, and he said, "Man, you're moving some metal." I said, "Thank you." And, but yeah, it ended up being a pretty nice hammer, and I'm proud of that one.
Yeah. Yeah. The ones with the story are always the best.
Yeah, they're the best.
Do you still hand make shoes much, or?
All my specialty stuff I do.
Okay,
I do a lot of keg, and I like the generic shape. One of the things that I hated to see come about was the pre-shaped shoes, because that just dumbed the whole trade down a little bit. But,
right. Yeah.
I tried them when they first came out, and it was like I still found myself hitting them and making them go where I wanted them to go. So I like the Kirkhart standards because they're easy to turn into a front. They're easy to turn into a high.
Right. Yeah.
But like if I need a bar shoe, if I need a Z bar, diagonal bar, whatever, I made my first patent bar here a couple months ago.
Okay.
It came out rougher than hell, but it did the job.
Yeah.
Did what the horse needed. So
right. Yeah.
Something like that. I keep the bar stock around, and I always try to make them in the shop if I can.
Right. Right.
So I don't have to. I can tweak them at the horse then, but it's a skill everybody should know.
Mm-hmm. Well, so what's your favorite type of bar stock to work with?
Mostly because I work on the smaller footed horses. I like the 5/16 by 3/4.
Okay. I kind of suspected you were going to say that. Yeah. What's your favorite pastime after work?
Oh, just working at home, tinkering or taking care of my own animals. We still trail ride some. I do have a lady friend that I've had for 30 years now.
Okay.
We're both divorced from our first spouses, and we decided that was enough.
Right.
We get along good for the most part. I mean, we have our riffs, but we say we've been happily unmarried for 33 years. But she likes to trail ride. She has a nice spotted walking horse, and I have a little quarter mare that could keep up with him.
Mm-hmm.
But recently, here a few years ago, I got a walker myself by accident.
Oh, okay.
I should tell that story. Okay, so this lady had this walker mare that was 8 years old, and she foundered her, killed her, tried to kill her with kindness, was way overweight, and she was going to put her down. This woman's not even my customer. She was in her 60s, and she said, "I can't have this horse. I'm paying board on her. I'm just going to put her down." I said, "This horse can be saved." She showed me the x-rays on him, and I said, "No, this horse can be saved. If you can save her, you can have her." So I said, I took her home.
You're on.
Yeah. I said, challenge accepted.
Yeah.
Tell me I can't do something, and you'll see it happen. So I took her. I put her on a diet. I put the package on that I like to use on the foundered ones. Within a week, she was walking. That was 3 years ago now, and she's being ridden.
Doesn't look back since.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. What's next on your bucket list?
I'm not quite sure.
Well, when you said you were going to hang up the chaps in 8 years, I wondered what would come next for somebody like you who kind of has to stay busy.
Yeah, I do plan on staying busy. I would like to maybe travel a little bit. I've done a little bit of, fun traveling. I did take a trip to Ireland. It's been over 20 years ago with the family. That was a nice trip. And since I've, been involved with the IAPF, I've gotten to do some good traveling. Like 2018, I got to work the World Equestrian Games in North Carolina. Yeah. That was an experience. I mean, pretty much just sat there and watched all the reining shows. I think I only fixed one shoe the whole time I was there. It was a good experience. I got to actually sit there with the new Hall of Fame member, Dwight Sanders, for a week.
Oh, okay. Cool.
That guy, he's a wealth of knowledge. He was just a lot of fun to sit there and just talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Dave Farley was there.
Yeah.
He was working it, and it was a good experience. And then 2 years ago at Equitana USA down in Kentucky, we were the farriers for that. So I spent 3 days there.
Oh, cool.
We did get to fix some horses there, some problems, but just little things like that maybe. And, I've started teaching a little bit with apprentices, and I'm trying to figure out a way maybe I could teach some.
Yeah.
And maybe just there's so many video ways of doing it, YouTube and TikTok anymore, maybe something like that, or phone consultation, something like that. But I have my property. I got 7 acres of land, and my house, and I've remodeled a lot of my house myself. Like you say, I'm a hands-on guy.
Yeah.
If it's mechanical or puzzle or whatever, I can put it together.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I'll find a way. I love to cut firewood. I like to do stuff like that and just keep myself busy.
So no dust is going to settle.
No,
anyways.
it's not. You're not going to grow grass under my feet.
No. Favorite brand of keg shoe?
I like the Kirkhardt. I like the Kirkhardt Standard and the Standard Light. Yeah.
Okay.
Like I said, they're a good generic shape and they're easy to shape into something.
Yeah, whatever you need, front or hind. And
The apprentice I have now, she's funny. She did a horseshoeing course at Hocking College here in Ohio. She's funny because she'll pull the shoes for me, and I'll trim the feet, and I'll have the shoes in the fire as I'm trimming the feet, and then I'll walk up and bang them out. And once I get them cooled off, I'll hand them to her and say, "Go check that one." And she'll walk over, check it, come back, and say, "How do you do that?" I just have a good memory for shapes. But the thing is, one of the exercises I do with her, if we have some time in the shop, I'll just take an old cake shoe, I'll throw it in the fire and shape it, and I'll hand her the same size and say, "Make it look like that."
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I take one heat, she takes 3 or 4, and she gets close.
Yeah. Well, that's the only way to kind of learn.
Yeah,
that,
it is. Yeah. Maybe something like that for down the road when I'm done. I'll let guys come over, guys or girls. There's more girls now doing this than ever before.
Oh, yeah,
so,
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Do you have a favorite inspirational quote?
One I made up myself. Yeah. There ain't no quit in this cowboy.
I like it. If you're stumped on a case or need backup, who do you call?
That's a good one because I can call Dave Farley. One of the guys I met, I didn't mention being on the board here, was Tim Cable.
Oh, yeah.
Tim he's an excellent standardbred guy, and he does some dressage horses. He's a good one to contact sometimes. And another one I can snap a picture to and text it to sometimes. He's a wealth of knowledge as far as I'm concerned, is Esco Buff.
Oh, okay.
I've sent him pictures or I've sent him x-rays. The guy can read x-rays better than any veterinarian, I'll send him an x-ray and he'll sometimes call back and say, "Get somebody to reshoot that. That's crap." Or
right, yeah.
He'll tell me what he's seeing, and it's most of the time, "Oh, okay, I'm just verifying what I'm seeing."
Mm-hmm.
It's just a good source to have.
Right. Do you have a favorite shoe or package for mystery lameness?
Mystery lameness, my favorite probably is a straight bar shoe.
Okay.
Especially if it's just one that I can't put my finger on and the people don't want to spend the money to see the vet. I can stick a straight bar shoe on that foot and most of the time make the horse more comfortable. That's my favorite.
Yep, you're not the only one. I've heard that a few times. What do you use as your planner?
Paper and pencil.
Just like me.
I'm not a technology guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. My smartphone's a lot smarter than me.
Favorite method of soothing aches and pains?
Working. I find when I keep busy and don't think about it, my body feels good.
Right. Yep. Favorite drink?
Water. Or actually, being raised by a football coach, it's Gatorade.
Oh, okay.
Original lemon lime Gatorade.
Okay, the OG.
Yeah.
Favorite genre of music?
Country.
All right.
Or Irish pub.
Yeah.
But I like my country.
Do you have a favorite song?
That's a good question. I have a lot of favorites. Actually, one of them it's more of a rock song, and it's Bob Seger's "Turn the Page."
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I love that song.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
What would you have been if not a farrier?
Well, like I said, I was an auto mechanic for years, but one thing I always wanted to be and never got to, almost did, but was a police officer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like you'd be too nice for that.
I probably would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can go.
But I have a funny story for that. I was working for the chief sheriff deputy in my county for a few years, and he kept bugging me. He'd say, "Why don't you quit this and come to work for me?" And I said, "What do I have to do?" He said, "Well, you got to go to the police academy, go through that." And he says, "And then you have to shave your beard off." And I said, "Forget it. I've had this beard since I was in my 20s. So we'd go back and forth, but he'd say, I said, "Why do you think I would want to do that?" So I see how you handle these horses. You can handle those assholes. Like, "Oh, come on, Mike. I don't want to." He was another Mike, but I said, I don't want to deal with that. I said, I like dealing with horses. They don't talk back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I guess the last question, the COVID question, what if you were stuck in a shop with somebody for a month, who would you want it to be?
Another guy I've got to know, and that would be Roy Bloom.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
I don't know that I could stand upright long enough because he makes you laugh so much just talking to him.
Yeah. You'd have some pretty good solid
Oh my God,
stomach
yeah,
muscles, right?
yeah. But I love Roy. Everybody that knows him does.
Yeah.
But he missed his calling. He should have been an artist.
Yeah. Oh,
Oh
I
my
know.
God, he
Yeah.
can draw. He can make. You just put a piece of steel in front of him, a little tiny piece of steel, and next thing you know, it's something.
Yeah.
I've seen it turn into a turtle, into a hummingbird. I mean, it's crazy what that man can do.
Yep. Oh,
And then
yeah.
his friend Tom Willoughby is just as good. And those guys are both so humble. They don't think they're anything special. But
Yeah.
both of them, they're just outstanding artists.
Creative
and
geniuses. Yeah.
they look at something and you can see the wheels start turning.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it's there
Something's
in
there.
front
Yeah.
of you.
Yep. I've seen projects from both of them. It's
Yeah.
incredible what
It
they
is.
can do.
Mhm.
Well, thank you very much, Mike. This
Well,
has
thank
been
you.
great.
And it's been good for me. And
Appreciate it.
me too. Thank you. I appreciate all you do for the business.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure. It's been fun.
It has been.
Before I let you go, I wanted to say a special thank you to each and every one of you for helping us to achieve the landmark of 200,000 plus unique downloads. While this metric doesn't capture all of the times that someone has listened to an episode, it's a pretty good indicator that lots of people are picking up what we're putting down here. So thank you for listening, and a special thank you to all of our guests. Thank you for trusting me to share your story and your wisdom with the rest of the world. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other out there. We'll talk soon.